My family and I have had a bit of a buzz of excitement over the last couple of weeks. For years, my niece Erin has been expressing her emotions by writing and singing songs. Now, for those of us who know her story, the songs have always had rich depth and meaning, but they never really went much further than the ears of her friends and us, of course, her family. That all changed in the last number of weeks. She had worked up a part of a song and put it out on the social media site TikTok. Well, it started to take off a little bit there, and before she knew it, she had a couple of 100,000 views on the clip that she released. Then it hit 500,000 views. And by the time it hit 1 million, she and her writing partner had finished the song off, had laid down the track, and they were ready to release it on Good Friday morning. Since then, and as of the time of me writing this sermon, it has been streamed 2 million times worldwide. She has been contacted by several big music labels about potential deals. But perhaps the highlight of this week was when she was interviewed on the biggest new music show in the United Kingdom on BBC Radio 1. Her song was described as the new music you want to get on your playlist right now. Wow. Now, other than feeling utter pride at Erin's achievement and her ability to take this forward in this way, this phrase that they use, the music you want on your playlist right now, well, it made me think about playlists and about how important they've actually been throughout my life. When I was a teenager, my friend Aaron and I asked my brother to make us the ultimate playlist of music, though back then it was just a mixtape or a compilation tape as we called it at home. My brother had, and he still has, a vast collection of CDs. And he also possesses an ear for a great tune. And he selected from this vast collection probably about 18 different tracks. He placed them in the perfect running order and finally recorded them all onto one cassette tape. He entitled it Very Groovy Music. It was amazing. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that it was even better than the Forrest Gump soundtrack that had come out at around the same time. We played that thing to death, knowing every single one of those tunes inside out and word for word by the time we had moved on from it. In fact, when I was writing this sermon, I just Facebook messaged Aaron to ask if he remembered it. And of course, he did, naming from memory almost every track that my brother had included, and that is almost 30 years ago now. Compilation tapes and playlists become special to us because they gather into one collection, the songs that speak clearly to us, songs that move us and stir us. When we put the right collection of songs in the right order, we can experience joy. We can experience a sense of comfort in those songs, like having a nice warm blanket put around us. We can also experience motivation. I mean, you can't listen to Eye of the Tiger and not want to train like Rocky Balboa, right? It motivates us. Our Bible year journey has today brought us to the Scripture's own playlist of songs, the Psalms. In essence, that's exactly what the book of Psalms in the Old Testament is. It's a collection of songs that have been written to express thoughts and feelings and emotions as the various songwriters journey through their lives and experience all that the world has. There are songs of exuberant praise. There are songs expressing deep sadness and lament. There are songs that were written for personal devotion, to be sung by one person. And there are songs that were written to give collective voice to whole gatherings of people and even entire nations of people. These songs ask some of the deepest questions of life. And they ask them of the God who is recognized throughout all 150 Psalms as the creator of all things. Over the coming weeks, we are going to spend time in the Bible's playlist, stopping off each week to spend some time with the very best of the songs that we can find in there, inviting God, as always, to speak through these ancient, living, inspired words, to speak right into our own hearts and lives. Today we read Psalm number 7, a song written by an individual who finds himself in some trouble. Now, we don't know exactly what that trouble is, what is causing it, who is causing it, what the specifics of the threat against the psalmist are. We don't know any of that. And all we do know is that the psalmist feels threatened by an enemy who, quote, would tear him apart like a lion. That's not soft language, right? And thus we can pretty safely say and understand that the writer of this song is legitimately worried as to the potential outcomes of this particular situation that he or she finds themselves in. The psalmist is terrified and does the only thing that he or she can think to do in such a moment, and that is cry out to God in prayer. Now, have you ever had that kind of a moment in which fear just takes over? You feel trapped, you feel endangered, you don't feel like there's any way out, and all that you can do is cry out to God. Oh God, please help. God, save me. God, I am so scared. Please, 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 just bring me through this. Now, if you have had a moment like that in your life, then you do actually know exactly what's going on here with the psalmist. His is a desperate cry for help to the God that he describes as his refuge. Now, to find refuge is, of course, to find a place of safety from danger. So when the psalmist says, right at the beginning of Psalm 7, that God is the one in whom he or she takes refuge, in whom he or she will find the safety that is so desperately sought after in this moment, well, the psalmist is opening up this song with a strong statement of trust in who God is. Now, trust is where this song starts. Actually, trust is where this song ends too. In fact, as we move through the entire psalm, on the way to its end, we're going to find many other statements of profound trust in God. The first of those is found in verses 3 through 5, in which, after having named this situation and the danger of it, the psalmist then pauses to ask whether or not he actually deserves to be in the pickle that he's in. And this is not always something that we humans are good at, right? You know, asking if our actions might somehow have been to blame for the circumstances we now find ourselves in. Ultimately, though, this moment of self-examination is very much a great moment of trust. Lord, if this was me, if I was at fault, if I did something with a heart that was just not right, well then, may my enemy catch me and trample my life into the ground, is the language that he uses. Again, it's not light language chosen by the psalmist. He means what he says. If this was me, then let be what needs to be. I trust you, God. In many of the versions of the Bible that you will have at home, at the end of the 5th verse, we find the little Hebrew word Selah. You'll see it again and again as you read through the Psalms. Now, there's no sort of direct translation of this word into the English language, but I've always been taught to read it in the Psalms as a command to pause in the middle of the reading. And if I have been taught well, I think that right here at the end of verse 5, this pause has been perfectly placed. Because I often feel like I don't actually spend enough time in self-examination. I assume that my motivations are righteous and good because I do actually tend to consider myself a generally righteous, good, and fairly decent person. I imagine many of us watching along here today do, and that's okay. It's good to a point. But if we think ourselves so highly so as not to take time to self-examine, then we're making a mistake. I mean, seriously, when was the last time you paused to take a look deep within, to ask God whether or not everything is okay in there and has been okay on the way to the circumstances you're in? Perhaps we all need to trust God with a Selah moment today. Continuing through the next verses of the psalm, we again see evidence of the psalmist's deep trust in God with this moment that he finds himself in. In verses 7 and 8, it's proclaimed that God is sovereign over all peoples, and the psalmist states that it is God alone who can judge. And ultimately he says that he can trust God's judgment. Judge me, O God, according to my righteousness and according to the integrity that is within me. But that might seem a little bit self-righteous of a thing to pray. But remember, this psalm is about a specific situation. It's not about the entire psalmist's life. And again, the psalmist has taken that moment to pause and self-examine. The psalmist is not saying that he himself is righteous and ought not to be judged at all. Rather, he's placing his trust in the judgment of the God who is sovereign over all, who knows all, and who sees all. Psalm 7 is a song of deep trust in a holy and sovereign God who promises to uphold the righteous and deal with the evildoers in the world. Of course, as you and I know, there remain evildoers in the world to this day. And so we must understand that this promise of God to deal with evil in our world is in fact a promise of God's ultimate victory. It is a future vision of the new creation in which evil and destruction will have no more power, will have no more place. Psalm 7 is a song that places the whole trust of the songwriter in that future vision. And it is a song that invites you and me to do the same. Friends, we all know that evil continues to be a reality in our world. We lament the evil actions of those who bring war and who drop bombs on the innocent in our world. We lament the evil actions of those who continue to enslave and traffic other human beings. We lament the evil actions of those who profit from selling lies and dealing in misinformation. We lament the evil of racism and prejudice that continues to demean and devalue our fellow human beings. There can be no doubting that evil and evildoers continue to be a reality in our world. And I know that this troubles many of you in the times in which we are living. And I can assure you, friends, it deeply troubles me too. And that's why I'm so very grateful for God's playlist and for this particular song that invites us to live with a deep and abiding trust in a holy, sovereign, and righteous God who has not left us alone, and who, in his Son Jesus Christ, has won a victory that cannot be taken away, and which gives us a hope that cannot perish, spoil, or fade. So let me ask you today, with all that's going on in our world, all that's going on in your life, how are you being invited to trust God in this moment? What have you been holding on to so tightly in recent times that this song of trust is now asking you to release and trust God with? I want to help you read this psalm in a way that helps you understand it the best. And what I want to recommend to you, wherever you are today, is that you get your hands on a copy of the Message. You'll find it online, or maybe you have a copy on your shelf. I invite you to take some time devotionally this week to read Psalm 7 as Eugene Peterson paraphrases it in the Message. I read it in preparation for this sermon today, and as I read through it, reading it aloud, I found myself being quite struck by the meaning of these words and the invitation to trust God in these times with everything. That's our call, friends. When the world feels like it's falling apart around us, our call is to be those who trust deeply in the promises of a holy and sovereign and righteous God. My prayer for you today is that whatever you are being invited to trust God with, you will give it unto God, and that you will experience the peace of God that passes all understanding as you do so. Will you join me in prayer together? And gracious God, we do give thanks that you are the one in whom we can place our trust. We don't understand the events that happen around us in the world. We don't understand the problem of evil in our world. But we have had a glimpse of your glory, and we know that it is you that we can trust. So gracious God, we give thanks for the reminder of that today, and we give thanks that you feed us with this sacrament, with your body and with your blood. May these elements today be that which reminds us in the days ahead that we are called to trust in you, the holy, righteous, and sovereign God of all creation. Amen. Friends, at the end of every sermon in our digital service, we invite you to reflect on some questions. And so I already asked the questions that we're going to flash up on screen at the end of the sermon, but I think it'd be good for you to take some moments now just on reflection with them. So here they are again.